Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute paradox of Java's enterprise dominance in 2026. I mean, if you've been following tech news lately, you know Python is literally everywhere. But despite Python's massive surge, Java is still holding on to its enterprise crown with an iron grip. So we're going to figure out exactly how it's pulling that off. Now, looking at the recent developer trend cycles, the relentless AI hype, and just the sheer volume of Python startups out there, you'd be totally justified in asking this question. Is Python finally killing Java? It's a debate we're seeing play out in boardrooms and developer forums all over the world right now. But, and this is the crucial point, there's a staggering figure driving this whole debate. According to Azul's 2025 State of Java survey, 99% of enterprises still actively use Java. Think about that for a second. 99%. That means it's practically ubiquitous in the corporate world. Okay, let's quickly map out our journey for today. First, we'll look at Java's 2026 enterprise paradox. Then, we'll unpack Java 25 features, dive into the garbage collection dilemma, and peek inside the new LXR algorithm. Finally, we'll compare Python versus Java performance and wrap up with the hybrid stack future.
All right, let's jump right into part one, Java's 2026 enterprise paradox.
So let's start with the cognitive dissonance that's really defining back-end engineering right now. There's this massive gap between what developers are hyping up online and what giant companies are actually running in production. Take a look at the sheer scale of the divide on this April 2026 TOB index. Python is absolutely soaring at nearly 21%, while Java sits way down at around 7.8%. That is a 13-point gap, which is actually the widest in TO's entire 25-year history. If you just looked at this chart, you'd probably think Java was fading away. But as our sources point out, nearly 70% of enterprise applications are still running on the JVM. So Python might own the developer mindshare, but Java definitely still owns the enterprise server room.
Moving on to section 2, unpacking Java 25 features.
To really understand how Java maintains this massive enterprise grip, we have to look at how it's evolving to boost developer velocity. Java has historically been criticized for being, well, overly verbose. But look at these Java 25 highlights. We've got compact source files for much faster prototyping. Constructor bodies are finally more flexible, meaning you don't have to use those awkward workarounds just for basic validation anymore. We also get module imports to cut down on those massive import lists. And scoped values are finally a standard feature, providing a way safer alternative to the old thread local. Plus, primitive types can now be used directly in pattern matching. The big takeaway here is that Java 25 is actively reducing boilerplate and removing developer friction. It's making the language simpler and way more expressive, and it's doing all of this without breaking that legendary multi-decade backward compatibility. And this next feature brilliantly illustrates Java's ongoing obsession with enterprise safety. Java 25 introduces the Key Derivation Function, or KDF API, as a preview standard. Instead of forcing developers to rely on external, third-party libraries just to handle sensitive cryptographic keys, Java is baking this essential modern capability directly into the standard library. Honestly, it's a perfect example of why massive banks and insurance companies still trust the platform so much.
Okay, let's head into section 3, the garbage collection dilemma.
Let's move down to the engine room and see how all this builds into Java's runtime performance, specifically the historic battle between throughput, which is getting lots of work done, and latency, which is getting work done quickly without pausing. As you probably know, garbage collection is how Java automatically frees up memory. Now, modern concurrent collectors like Shenandoah and ZGC are amazing at keeping pause times incredibly low, sometimes even sub-millisecond. But, they aren't magic. To achieve those crazy low pauses, they sacrifice CPU cycles, demand a massive memory footprint, and actually reduce raw throughput. The fundamental problem here is that they rely on tracing. Tracing all live objects in a massive heap eventually becomes unscalable, leaving applications really struggling to keep up with massive memory allocation rates. Just look at this data from an enterprise search engine benchmark. The trade-off is absolutely stark. We're looking at a tight memory environment here. The G1 collector pushes an impressive 112,000 queries per second. But Shenandoah, it completely collapses, pushing only 15,000. That's a massive 7x hit on throughput compared to G1, simply because it can't keep up with the allocation rate without a huge memory buffer. This basically proves that short garbage collection pauses do not magically equal low application latency. But check out the bottom row. LXR, it actually matches G1's incredible throughput while keeping that tail latency highly competitive. No way, right? Well, that brings us to Section 4, inside the LXR algorithm.
So, this LXR collector is a revolutionary breakthrough detailed in recent academic research from the Australian National University and Google. Think of this whole process like a librarian tracking readers in a massive library. Instead of shutting down the entire library to trace every single book just to find out which ones aren't being read, which is essentially what Stop the World Tracing does, LXR does something completely different. It uses highly efficient reference counting. It basically just keeps a running tally of how many people are looking at a specific object. The moment that tally hits zero, bam, the memory is reclaimed instantly, without any copying.
LXR actually operates in 3 incredibly smart steps. First, it uses regular, very brief stop-the-world pauses, relying on that reference counting we just talked about. Second, it uses lazy decrement processing. That just means it cleans up older, mature objects promptly without bogging down the main system. And finally, because reference counting alone can't catch objects that only point to each other in an isolated loop, it runs an occasional concurrent backup trace just to sweep up that cyclic garbage. By combining the immediacy of reference counting with strategic block evacuation, LXR delivers world-class throughput, and it does it without needing massive memory headroom. All right, let's pivot to Section 5, Python versus Java performance. So, with Java's engine humming at maximum efficiency and new features making it easier to write than ever, how do CTOs actually choose between Java and Python for enterprise workloads today? Well, the honest truth is that they excel at completely different things. Python absolutely wins on developer velocity. Its code bases are typically 3 to 5 times shorter, making it the undisputed king of rapid MVP delivery, data engineering, and of course AI integration. But on the flip side, Java continues to dominate multi-decade enterprise stability. If you're building a mission-critical banking core, a high-frequency trading platform, or a massive transaction backbone where static type safety and extreme scale are non-negotiable, yeah, Java is still the undisputed heavyweight champion.
Let's put some numbers to it and look at raw performance for a standard REST API. Java, using Spring Boot, completely crushes it at 40,000 to 60,000 requests per second per core, especially now with Java's virtual threads. Python's Fast API, meanwhile, sits around 20,000 to 22,000. So yes, Java is literally twice as fast here. But, as the CTO guide points out, most standard enterprise microservices sit well below that 20,000 requests per second threshold anyway. Because let's face it, most apps are just waiting on databases. So Python operates very comfortably in the vast majority of real-world enterprise scenarios.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, the hybrid stack future. Let's zoom back out to the big picture of enterprise architecture in 2026. What's the actual solution to this whole Python versus Java debate? The reality is, it's really not an either-or question anymore. Today, 62% of enterprises are using Java to integrate AI. And what that almost always means in practice is a pragmatic, polyglot architecture, a hybrid stack. In these massive systems at companies like Netflix and Spotify, Java is running the heavily loaded transactional backbone, while Python sits right alongside it, serving up the machine learning models and data pipelines. It's a team effort. I think Linus Torvalds perfectly summarizes this vibe. Talk is cheap. Show me the code. The real debate at the CTO level isn't about which language wins synthetic benchmarks on some random white paper. It's about which language your specific team can reliably ship, secure, and maintain in production for the specific workload you actually have. So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up this explainer. As you design your next massive system, are you still fighting old language wars, trying to find one single winner to rule them all? Or are you ready to embrace the polyglot future, where both Java and Python do exactly what they were built to do? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Let that sink in and keep building.